friend forwarded this post to me early in the week, and I read it and was disturbed by it, although not fully surprised by it. It's by a journalist and author named Tom Zoellner. I never heard of him, but I realized after reading this that I that's something I lack in my life, and I look forward to reading a lot more from him soon. But this was so perceptive and so insightful. He talks about his experience meeting with some people who worked with ICE and hanging out with them in bars or something like that. And yeah, I just want to get right into it. But, the reason I say it's not surprising, he basically tells that it's kind of a rogue, thuggish organization, which you can kind of tell when you watch all the videos of these raids and these arrests, where look, these guys, they don't even have uniforms. Look how they're all wearing different clothes. I mean, they're wearing their personal clothes. And some have T-shirts, some have something that looks like a uniform. They don't even all have the bulletproof vest. Some do, some don't. And some videos I saw last week, I noticed, and I know people have noticed this a long time before I did. I'm a little late to these things sometimes. But yeah, I noticed that they don't, they're not using government cars. They're using their own personal vehicles. They showed an arrest, I think it was in, yeah, I think it was in California, a marijuana farm or something like that. And they showed the arrest, and the guys were taking the people out of this business, and then they were running to the parking lot, and then they all were getting in their cars, the ICE agents. And I mean, one guy had a white pickup truck, another guy had what looked like a navy blue sedan, another guy had a black car. There were a couple of cars that looked semi-official, but it dawned on me these guys are driving their own personal vehicles, which told me they're literally just hiring people off the streets. They don't even have the necessary supplies and vehicles that they need for these people to work. They're they're just throwing them into the job. Or it also looks like they're just literally pulling people out of offices around the government. Hey, you don't look busy today. Come, we're going to arrest some people. Anyway, that's what it looks like is happening. So let me get into this. I just wanted to read through it real quick. I think you'll enjoy it. The thing is, when I first read it, I thought, yeah, that's really good. But I got, there's so many other things going on. I don't want to do a video on it. But it kind of haunted me through the week. Like it stayed with me. Every time I saw news about something, it reminded me of what Tom had written. So let's go through this and see what he had to say. It's pretty insightful. He starts off, he says, I got to know a number of U.S. Border Patrol agents after the 2016 election and drank beer with them in various Tucson bars. While these conversations were friendly, they left me troubled, as his post left me troubled after I read it. The depth of extreme right-wing and jingoistic convictions of most of them was genuinely surprising to me, as I had expected the measured norms of federal law enforcement to be their public face. Not these guys. A lot of them had joined in the patriotic fervor after 9/11, thinking they would be going after America's enemies. But when that didn't happen, they took this vengeful attitude to the generally helpless Central American and Mexican laborers that they sought to apprehend, today, not after 9/11, obviously. He says, I was also surprised by the overt cruelty of some agents that I met and the general lack of professionalism. And you can see this in the video, in the videos that we're seeing of their arrest and their rage. You can see the cruelty in some of these guys. And you can certainly see the lack of professionalism. That's why, Trump supporters will maybe listen to this and say, you don't know what this guy is saying, whether it's true or not. It's just some guy telling a story. Well, you can know it's true. I believe it's true because it resonates with me with everything else that we're seeing. It's consistent with what we see in the public images that are coming out of all these arrests and raids around the country. Then check this out. He said, I had to block one of them, one of the men he met who works for ICE. I had to block one of them on this platform, the social media platform where he posted this on Facebook. And he says that's a rare thing for him because he doesn't normally block people. But he blocked him because, and going back to reading in his voice, because he told me with some amount of seriousness that I should hang for treason because I supported Kamala Harris for president, and that this would be the fate of other Democrats who were in on it, whatever it is supposed to mean. Now, that resonates with me too, because don't come to me and say, oh, MAGA's not like that. They've been like that to me. People from my old church, and no, I say old, my former church, it's former for a reason, were cursing me during the 2016 election because I wasn't going to vote for Trump. I couldn't. The funny thing is, and the ironic thing, and the thing I hate about this whole thing, uh, a lot of people see these church people, going rah, 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 everything MAGA does. And they think, whoa, if that's what God is all about, then I reject God. If that's what his word, the Bible, is all about, I reject the Bible. But literally, the reason I couldn't support Trump from the very start, from 2015 on, is because of what I believe and what the Bible teaches. It's in the, if you reject Trump and think that you're also rejecting the Bible because you think the Bible supports Trump because these people who identify as Christians support Trump, then I got news for you. You're more in line with the Bible than people who go to church every week who support all of this. That's why I couldn't support Trump, because he went against so many biblical principles and biblical teachings. And I didn't care about power. I was a lifelong Republican. And I always wanted the Republicans to win the presidential elections. But when it came down to this, as a Christian, I had to put that first. I said, you know what? Forget our worldly power. If we have to compromise like that to get it, then I don't want anything to do with it. And there are tons of Christians around the country who feel exactly the same way. And you've never heard of them because, we're not the largest group. We're not the largest group. So anyway, but this totally resonates with me that somebody threatened him like that, or, made something that sounded like a threat. It's totally believable. And then he says, oh, so he's talking about the guy who said he should hang for treason because he supported Kamala for president. Um, and let me see. Sorry, I lost my place. Let me find where I was. All right, I'll just start from here. The guy said I should hang for treason because I supported Kamala for president, and that this would be the fate of other Democrats who were in on it, whatever it was supposed to be. So he's saying that Democrats should be killed. And then he says, reminder, this is a federal agent currently serving, advocating the murder of U.S. citizens because of their mainstream political beliefs. Now, this has got to hit hard. If you're not awake to everything that's going on in MAGA world, maybe you're a Republican, you support it, but you don't really realize what's going on. This is really the nature of a lot of the people that form the core of MAGA. And you may not be like this. You may say, well, I would never threaten anybody. I don't think people should die because they vote for a Democrat. Well, that's good. But what you got to know, if you're a Republican and you support, this whole movement, this is at the heart of the movement. This is what's at its heart. You got to know what you're associating with. Don't just walk around blind, and don't walk around with your head in the sand saying you don't really want to know about it. You got to know these are the people that are the energy behind this movement. So this is serious stuff. A federal agent, a law enforcement agent, currently serving, saying that U.S. citizens should be murdered because they were going to vote for somebody he didn't like. In the past, federal agents and people who worked for the government and people in the military, they thought they were fighting for people's rights to vote for whoever they wanted to. But in this group, in ICE, that's apparently not the case. And that is why this whole thing that's going on with them is getting pretty scary. He says studies of criminality among Customs and Border Patrol officers found that protections against corruption, get this, are exceptionally weak, and that prosecutions for unjust shootings are rare. Okay? So this is kind of sounding like a bit of a lawless organization, a lawless law enforcement organization. It's all bad, really bad stuff. From the Arizona Daily Star last week, which was, I guess, a couple of weeks ago now, Will Cox, border agent Bart Conrad Yeager, who's 39 years old, was also charged with 6 counts of pandering or encouraging someone to engage in prostitution, 1 count of attempted child sex trafficking, and 2 counts of fraud between July 2023 and March 2024. This is a really bad guy. In Cochise County, I'm not sure how they pronounce that. I will go with the Spanish pronunciation and call it Cochise County. I hope that's close. The investigation found that Yeager often went home early, at times solicited sex acts for money while on duty, and got reimbursed with government funds for Pima County hotels where the sex acts took place, Cooper wrote. Between 2021 and 2024, Yeager paid $42,400 in 231 transactions with women. Now get this, in a 3-year period, he had 231 transactions with women, which is several a week for 3 years. He had been investigated for allegedly raping a woman in 2014. The Tucson police told the Border Patrol about this. Nothing was done. Yeager kept working. So get that? The Border Patrol had been told about his history by the police. They're like, yeah, no problem. He's our kind of guy. Bring him on in. And they hired him. Now he says hiring standards are going to get even lower. The mega agency known as ICE now has $45 billion to spend on staff and facilities, plus a mandate to do 3,000 deportations a day, almost all of them the same kind of defenseless people from the countryside who came here to do terrible jobs for low pay. The only type, and to do terrible jobs for low pay, they're willing to spend all their time, their full-time working time, hours in the week, doing these horrible jobs for low pay. Does that sound like a criminal to you? Is that the kind of work criminals do all day, every day? No, it's not. Criminals are out trying to cheat and, get away with the easy life. This is not the easy life these people are seeking. When you see these people working so hard, you should applaud them, not want to arrest them. They're not hurting America. They're making America stronger. They are, in fact, part of what makes America great. You take them away, you're not going to make America great again. You're going to destroy it. Hmm. Amazing. Amazing how short-sighted these MAGA people are, really. Anyway, oh, and then he says the only type of person who would be drawn to such work either has a cruel streak or no interest in real law enforcement. That's right. And I think we're going to see more and more. They have a cruel streak, a really, really strong one. I see that in the arrests. Oh, they're so cruel sometimes. Already packed with dregs, the rejects from other agencies, I believe ICE is going to be made up of even more thugs and bullies drunk on their new power, with the same lack of oversight that let monsters like Yeager run rampant. Their overt loyalty to Trump, which is now the chief or only qualifying principle at the top of most cabinet agencies, will likely be the nudge criteria for promotion and advancement. And it may be asking too much of this Justice Department or FBI to make a serious attempt to get to the bottom of any atrocities they may commit while masked up and stuffing people into unmarked white vans without identifying themselves. Yeah, well, he's got that right. It's going to be way too much to ask the Justice Department to do anything about this. Another story I was looking at this week are the threats being made against federal judges. There's been between March and I believe now, there's been, no, between March 15th, the 6 weeks after March 15th, so like between March and May, let's say, there were 165 threats to federal judges, serious threats, like death threats to federal judges across the country. In the 5 months leading up to January of this year, in other words, the last 5 months of the Biden administration, there had been 65 threats in 5 months. And now there's over 160 in 6 weeks. That tells you these threats are going up. And guess what the Justice Department is doing? They have not investigated a single one of those threats, not a single one. But guess what they have done? They've investigated judges. They've arrested a few judges around the country. And one, I think it was in Wisconsin or Minnesota, and one was in New Mexico. At least two I know of. And so they're going after judges, but they're not going after the people who are committing felonies, punishable by up to 10 years in prison, threatening a federal judge. They're not even investigating those people. They're not even trying to figure out who they are. That's the kind of government we have today, folks. Get real. All you people, look, I got to find this. I where'd my thing go? I had a friend on Facebook. She wrote to me this week. She found out I had been critical of Trump. Apparently, she didn't know. She hadn't paid attention to anything I've said for the last 10 years. She said, Jonathan, I thought you were a Republican. And I said, well, I was a lifelong Republican up until Trump came along. And she said, dang, really? Why? And I wrote her back and I just said, you know what? All I said was, you know what? I'm thinking if you haven't figured it out yet, I said, just wait a few months and you'll start to see. It's going to start to become more clear. Just wait a few more months and you'll see what I'm talking about. We're all going to see. We cannot run a government like this and expect that horrible consequences aren't going to fall on all of us eventually. This is not good stuff, guys. Not good stuff at all. All right. He then says those with backgrounds in the Proud Boys or other white identitarian groups will surely be among the applicants. You can bet on that. Proud Boys. This group is so bad. I had not with them, but I had a run-in with a similar group in 2010 or 11 when I was working in uh, conservative and Republican politics. Not working on it, not like I had a job doing it, but I was putting a lot of time in running a little organization that I had started to promote Republicans and try to beat Democrats. And I ran into one of these groups. It was Oath Keepers. Somebody from Oath Keepers started calling me and said, "Hey, we have a great group. Uh, we're swearing all of our members to uphold the Constitution in the event that the president orders them to do something that's unconstitutional." Now, what they were thinking at the time, and this was back around the time when they started, was that Barack Obama was going to order them to do unconstitutional things. Okay. So I thought, that sounds good. That's a great organization. And so I thought, yeah, I'll help you promote that a little bit. So I let them use my website. It was a social networking site I'd set up for, to where conservatives could gather. And they, would post things here and there. But then I started to notice their posts started to sound a little violent. They were super angry. And the more I started to learn about them, the more kind of worried I got that, wait, these guys don't seem to be on the up and up. There seems to be something wrong here. Then a woman from this group called me one time, and she called from Montana, I believe. And she was like, look, we all got guns. We're all going to do. I'm like, don't talk to me about that. I don't want to know anything about that. I said, what are you talking about? Guns? You don't need guns. This is politics. But then at that point, I was like, I got to, drop all ties with these people because this is not going to a good place. So I was working in this, so I was close enough to it to see all of this a long time ago. So I knew a long time ago that this was bubbling up in conservative circles, and it finally bubbled up. Anyway, he says large parts of our federal police apparatus will begin to resemble the buffs and racist deputy gangs that left a lasting stain on the LAPD and the LA Sheriff's Department. With a record of skirting Fourth Amendment protections in pursuit of their mission, ICE has the potential to morph into the president's internal army against domestic enemies. This is a takeaway line. Please remember this. Remember it. Keep it in your minds as you watch everything unfold week to week. Let me read it one more time. They're violating the Constitution right now in the way they're arresting people. And of course, that brings up a big worry. If they can get away with that, violating the Constitution, they're not going to stop there. They're not going to stop with immigrants. So this is going to, yeah, they will eventually go against domestic enemies, meaning enemies of Trump, meaning all of us who speak out. With a record of skirting Fourth Amendment protections in pursuit of their mission, ICE has the potential to morph into the president's internal army against domestic enemies. And he sounds a little more optimistic than I would be when he says ICE has the potential to morph into that. I think they're already morphing into that. Maybe not against his domestic enemies yet, but that's coming. That's coming. All Americans of good conscience should protest the expansion of this troubled agency and be extremely suspicious of anything they say. That's right, because they will lie about you if you get in their way. Be careful around them. All right. From The Guardian yesterday, he's quoting an article from The Guardian newspaper in London. U.S. immigration officers made false and misleading statements in their reports about several Los Angeles protesters they arrested during the massive demonstrations that rocked the city in June. According to federal law enforcement files obtained by The Guardian, the officer's testimony was cited in at least 5 cases filed by the U.S. Department of Justice amid the unrest. Now listen to this. The Justice Department has charged at least 26 people with assaulting and impeding federal officers and other crimes during the protest over immigration raids. Prosecutors, however, have since been forced to dismiss at least 8 of those felonies, many of them which relied on officers' inaccurate reports, court records show. They're literally making stories up and arresting them and going to court. And the Justice Department is going to court with it. And if you're a lawyer for the Justice Department and you refuse to go into court and lie, you will be fired. You'll be fired. They're firing people who tell the truth in the Justice Department. Folks, we're in a bad place. This is no longer about, hey, if we keep doing this or that, it'll eventually come. No, this is it. It's here. It's here. This is it. The Justice Department firing lawyers because they refused to lie for Trump. Wow, that's that's a mighty fall. We've fallen mightily since January. All right, he goes on to say, you may think me naive for being surprised by these personal interactions described above, and I don't. And maybe I was, but I went into it with a belief based on a few years of covering police as a journalist in the 1990s that federal law enforcement had reasonable hiring standards for agents and functioning internal affairs departments. I also knew of many compassionate acts by Border Patrol agents during the crossing waves in the early 2000s. This, or times seem to have changed for the much worse, not for the worse, for the much worse. It's pretty chilling coming from somebody who's been this close to all these people. Now, he's not anti-cop. A qualifier or two. I'm not anti-cop. In fact, I'm inclined to like and trust them. Some of the extreme rhetoric around the 2020 protests left me cold. I had several police officers in my family who were good and honest public servants. I interacted professionally with hundreds of them. It's a tough job. It's a tough job that, when done well, is deserving of our respect. But what's happening with ICE is not deserving of our respect. It has been pointed out to me that Yeager finally got arrested because of an internal Border Patrol investigation. Okay, that's good. But to me, this is no vindication of the agency. His purported crimes were so blatant and went on for so long, more than a decade, that it seems a grim commentary on just how bad the standards are over there. How could they wait so long after some this stuff had been going on and being repeated multiple crimes over and over again every month? All right. So this, I guess, I don't know. Maybe that's the Jaeger guy. I don't know. Anyway, well, history tells us that a governmental security agency that's given the kind of funding that this agency has been given recently, and that has little to no oversight, and that gives total loyalty to one man rather than the law and the Constitution, will pose a danger to everyone. With massive funding and little oversight and open political favoritism, ICE becomes a tool of power rather than a servant of the people and an obeyer of the law, a follower of the law. They're no longer a follower of the law. Their mission isn't serving the public anymore. Their mission is protecting those who they serve politically. And again, I'm not saying this is going to happen someday if we don't do something to stop it now. I'm saying that it's already happening. It's happening right now. All right. So it's all bad stuff. And it's, I don't know what we can do about it, but being aware of it's got to be the first step. And I honestly think a lot of Trump supporters, more of the kind of mainstream people who aren't all crazy MAGA people, I think those people aren't aware of all these things. So let's help make them aware of it. You know, that's the only way to draw back some of the support that MAGA has right now. And I think that's about all. That's the best we can do at this point. Anyway, yeah. So I just wanted to say thank you for your attention to this matter. I'm Jonathan Burton, a YouTuber of the United States. Right. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.